astronauts, it's me, Brandy, and welcome back to Astro-Tarot Research. So I'm back with another astrology video. I got a request to talk about disabilities. I wasn't sure which disability to talk about, so I just kind of Googled celebrities with disabilities, and the first disabilities that popped up were learning disabilities. So I decided to conduct a mini study, because if I did a long study, you guys probably wouldn't hear from me from a month, and I was like, no, we have decided to post more frequently, so we got to do these mini studies. So I looked at about 32 charts of celebrities who had learning disabilities, mainly dyslexia and ADHD, and here are the results. Before we start, I do want to remind you to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram, where I post astrological findings, and sometimes I post some tarot stuff. I really got to get on that and post a little bit more stuff for you guys. And on TikTok, you can follow me if you want to just see my general life updates and what I'm doing, because I do stuff besides astrology and tarot. And yeah, let us just kind of jump into this study. I do want to preface this by saying that this is Vedic astrology. So when I mention the sign of Cancer, Aquarius, whatever, that is all in Vedic. And you can look up the translations of those degree placements. It is easily accessible. I think Wiki has pages. There's literally tons and tons of pages for you to look up your own charts. So the things I decided to look at in this study is sign placement, sun nakshatra placement, moon nakshatra placement, ascendant, and I decided to also look at Mercury and the ascendant ruler placement. So here are the results of my findings. Now, I do have to look at my phone because there's no way that this is going to be completely memorized for you guys. I'm just not that kind of person. I really wish I was. Starting with the sun sign placement that is most likely to have ADHD or dyslexia is sun in Cancer or Capricorn, and Sagittarius was third place. As for moon placement, moon in Aries or Scorpio. For ascendant, we have Capricorn, so Capricorn's coming up again. And for Mercury placement, we have Pisces, and the second was Cancer and Capricorn tied for second place in terms of Mercury. So Capricorn seems to be coming up quite frequently when it comes to learning disabilities. Very interesting to note. And it's also pretty amazing to see that we have Mercury and Pisces coming up as well. And we all know that Mercury is debilitated in Pisces. As for nakshatra placements, we have Sun and Uttara Ashada or Uttara Bhadrapada being the most popular placement for people with ADHD or dyslexia. Moon in Rohini is the most popular sun rule placement, though I will say for moon rule placement, things were a little bit more scattered. I think I would want to look up more charts to see if there was more of a pattern with the moon ruled signs. But so far, I'm not going to put a strong emphasis on saying that it is the moon sign that is making, that is giving sort of dyslexia or ADHD. Like I said, for that one, it's just there were so many different placements that kind of like evened out. So I'm gonna say it's not as significant as some of the other placements that were very clear. When it comes to ascendant, Chitra was the most popular ascendant for people having ADHD. The most popular nakshatra placements for Mercury for celebrities who had ADHD and dyslexia was Pusha, Anuradha, and Uttara Bhadrapada, which is interesting because they are all Saturnian ruled nakshatras. So you see the influence of Saturn again, once again, on dyslexia and ADHD. In terms of house placement, the sun in the 9th house came up the most. However, I'm not sure if that one is significant. It's similar to the moon, where there is a little bit more of a evenness to the pattern, like things were pretty close and pretty neck and neck for that one. So I would think at least a few more charts to be like, oh yeah, this one is a significant pattern. The placements I do want to say who had no points for sun, meaning we didn't see any celebrities with this sun placement, is celebrities who had no placements in the 5th or the 11th house. So if somebody's sun was in the 5th or the 11th house, they didn't really come up much for ADHD and dyslexia. Very interesting. Moon in the 8th house was the most popular placement for celebrities having ADHD and dyslexia. And the ascendant ruler, meaning the planet that rules the rising sign and where it's set, the ascendant ruler being in the 6th house was the most popular placement for celebrities having dyslexia. And Mercury in the 1st house was also a popular placement for celebrities who had dyslexia and ADHD. But that one is also very similar, where I'm not sure if that's significant. It came up frequently enough for me to note it, but it's also like, I want a little bit more information on that one. So let's start with the reason I chose the planet Mercury, because I could have looked at Venus, I could have looked at Saturn, I could have looked at Jupiter. But from my astrological knowledge, Mercury is a sign placement which rules skills and sort of deductive reasoning and communicative matters, as well as mental functioning. So that is the main reason that I chose to do Mercury, but we would probably see more patterns if we decided to look at Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, especially Saturn, since it came up quite frequently. But the things I do want to say about Mercury is it's interesting how Mercury in the 1st house, meaning Mercury being in your 1st house is having like such a huge major influence on your life, came up to be the most popular planet for where Mercury is situated for celebrities with ADHD and dyslexia, which does tell you that Mercury does play quite a major role when it comes to the communication, the ability for mental skills and functioning. So it's nice to have that confirmation of astrology, once again, kind of like approving itself. So your 1st house, I'll say this, is basically the setup of the structure of your entire life. It kind of gives you very, very major themes of things that you're going to be dealing with throughout your life. And obviously, if you have ADHD and dyslexia, then the mercurial matters will be coming up very prominently for you. So people with dyslexia who kind of switch around words in their head, or may have issues reading like a script, which a lot of these celebrities said they had a lot of issues reading the scripts. It kind of makes sense that Mercury would be in their 1st house, because it's something that's a daily matter, something that's coming up, a theme within their life, something that's just very prominent within their life. And we're going to get into the positive things of dyslexia and ADHD in a moment, but I did want to discuss that first. And then the other thing to be noted about the ascendant ruler also being in the 6th house, which kind of goes back to that theme I was talking about, things coming up very daily and frequently. And if you don't know, the 6th house is the house of daily routines. Challenges you deal with on a daily basis, places of conflict. It is one of the house placements of disease, dysfunctioning, problems, and obviously having your ascendant ruler in the 6th house means that you're going to have to encounter some sort of, disability, possibly, especially in this case, on a daily basis. So it actually really kind of lines up quite well when we put it that way, because now somebody's whole life story goes into the fact that they are dealing with challenges quite regularly. And I guess you don't really look at ADHD, at least I don't really particularly look at ADHD, or at least I didn't before the study, and dyslexia as a challenge on a daily basis. It's just, I just never really thought of it in that manner. But looking it up and studying it and kind of like reading, well, at least reading and refreshing and kind of getting my mind wrapped around it. Yeah, these are challenges that people with ADHD and dyslexia, they have to deal with and overcome this on a daily basis. Like, you know, getting hyper focused on something, or even getting a little bit distracted, or getting bored really easily. These are things that you have to persevere and you have to overcome, and that you have to manage and find balance within. Which leads me to the other matter of how Mercury came up the most frequently within Saturnian ruled nakshatra placements. And If you guys don't know by now, I'm gonna beat it into your brain. Saturn is the sign of resilience and perseverance. And one of the things that I read, actually this came up twice or three times, is a couple of articles mentioning that people with ADHD and dyslexia have to be resilient because they have to encounter having to deal with their disorders or their learning disabilities on a daily basis. And that sort of effort and mentality is something that is very Saturnian. When you have that Mercury and Saturn energy coming together, which I would love to look up conjunctions and see if anyone's having aspects of Saturn, like Mercury conjunct Saturn, something like that. But Saturn's kind of letting you know, it's saying you're going to have to put in a lot of effort, a lot of hard time when it comes to the mercurial ruled things, the things that have to deal with cognitive functioning, the things that have to deal with, reading, writing, calculating, and things of the matter like that, schooling, homework, communication. These things are going to require a lot of resilience, a lot of patience, and a lot of effort on your part. So it kind of does make it makes a great amount of sense that when we have Saturn and Mercury being in a Saturn Nakshatras, that these people have to put in more effort when it comes to the mercurial ruled areas in their life. Like with ADHD, people who have it can get distracted easily. They have to take their time with things. They have to wait. They have to listen very well, maybe even have things repeated to them over and over again. Something like along the lines of that. It can also lead to mood swings, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. So having to manage your moods quite well. Like, these are things that just come together when you see the representation of Saturn and Mercury. You're like, oh yeah, Mercury rules communication, Saturn rules hard work. Oh, Mercury's in a Saturn ruled nakshatra. These people have to work harder in the areas of communication, listening, skills, and etc. in areas like that. Impulsiveness, because Mercury can kind of be, well, it's mercurial, it's all over the place. And so these people have to work a little bit harder to function in a way that is deemed acceptable by society. Something mercurial, if we look at the word mercurial, it means somebody who kind of has like many talents and many skills, or somebody who has the ability to do many things. And so when you have Mercury in a Saturn ruled nakshatra, you have somebody who is struggling to multitask, which is one of the issues when it comes to ADHD. So you can see how these things work quite well together. And then, as I mentioned before, Mercury is, and as we can see that Mercury is debilitated in the sign of Pisces, and it has been said over and over again, at least I've seen it by many astrologers, that Mercury does not do that well in the water signs. And we can see how Mercury was suffering in Pusha, Mercury suffering in Anuradha, Mercury suffering in Uttara Bhadrapada. It's very much struggling to deal with that water sign energy. And it's good to see that astrology matches up and that it really does come together. Though I will say, in Vedic astrology, Mercury is known to be debilitated in the nakshatra Revati, more so than Uttara Bhadrapada. And Revati did get some points in, I'm not gonna lie. But Uttara Bhadrapada took the cake, and as well as Anuradha and Pusha. But overall, we do see that there is some truth that the fact that Mercury is struggling in the water signs. And that brings me to another point that I want to make. If we look at the positive things that come with ADHD and dyslexia, it matches up very well to the qualities that are very prominent within water signs, the things that make them so unique, and the reasons why we say water signs are creative, the reason why we say that water signs are intuitive. When I started looking up these qualities, these positive qualities that were associated with ADHD and dyslexia, these words came up frequently. So one of the positive qualities that are associated with dyslexia is that they are more curious than the average person, which flows really nicely with what I've seen for water signs. Water signs are about connection and about going beyond, going to a deeper level of human emotion, connection to your environment, connection to people, connection to things. Water signs tend to have a strong curiosity about the world and everything in it, which is why we have this like water-like energy. Another thing on the list, as I mentioned before, is people with dyslexia have been noted to be highly intuitive. And what do we say that the water signs are? That they're highly intuitive. So people having their Mercury in these water sign placements, it's just cool that the information is matching up quite like pretty much exactly. What else do we say about water signs? We say water signs look at the big picture. They don't like looking too much of the deep details and less, actually, how do I explain this? Water signs look at the big picture. They kind of like zoom out, and then they look at all these little things within it. But they do always look at the big picture. And that's one thing that I saw come up with ADHD and dyslexia. People with ADHD, they kind of like zoom out and look at the big picture, and they can focus on this one little small detail that is off. And people with dyslexia, they like to take things in with all of their senses. So what I mean by that is you may be talking to them, but they're thinking of things through images. They're thinking of things of how they feel, how they taste, how they smell. Like they have this very like huge kind of like sensory thing going on in their mind. So that's why it kind of creates the dyslexia. It doesn't create dyslexia. That's one of the components of dyslexia. Because they're taking in so much information, it can be hard to process. And that's one thing that we mention quite frequently, at least as people who study astrology that I've seen mention quite frequently, is that you see people who have their Mercuries in these water sign placements, they really do put an emphasis on the larger picture, the everything, like this huge imaginative world that they have going on in their minds. Like people like Einstein, how he would like play, I think it was the violin, as he kind of thought of things like the theory of relativity and all of that. Like they have a way about communicating and doing things that make sense to them, instead of just like sitting down and writing a math problem and things like that. They may like draw a picture, or they may like use a scent, and that reminds them and makes something click in a different direction. Because water signs, they're going with the flow of everything. They're taking in all of their senses and using everything around them to create a bigger picture, which was one of the things that were mentioned about people with dyslexia, that they have very huge imaginations. And especially in Uttara Bhadrapada, that being the sign of imagination. And we saw that Mercury in Pisces was the most popular placement for people who had ADHD and dyslexia. So, and that being the sign of imagination, creativity, kind of taking in all of the senses, being otherworldly, thinking in the abstract form, thinking of unconventional solutions, going beyond the norm. That's something to think about. And also, like, the sign of Pisces rules kind of like other dimensions as well. If you see my Black Beauty study, you saw that I talked about time travel. I don't know if I talked about space, but space is something that comes up with the sign of Uttara Bhadrapada and Revati, and Purva Bhadrapada too, which is also in the sign of Pisces. Going to different galaxies, experiencing different dimensions, ghosts, and all of those things. And one of the qualities that I saw about dyslexia is that they think dimensional. So they're thinking on levels that the average person may not be thinking upon. And similar to ADHD, from what I've read, it said neurological brains, they filter out extraneous details, but the ADHD brain takes it all in. It doesn't miss a thing. It tunes into feelings, nonverbals, subtle cues. So what I was kind of saying, how the water signs are about that connection and about looking at everything and the entire picture. They're looking about what's not being said, what's under the surface, what's below, all of these things. Like I said, the social cues, the subtle cues. It's about, they're a lot better with conversation, and they can easily read a person better. So somebody with ADHD is a lot better at reading somebody emotionally, which is what the water signs are really all about. So for me, it's quite amazing to see astrology really lining up with a lot of the symptoms that I've read about with ADHD and with dyslexia. Okay, so like literally every video I've seen about the water sign talks about this over and over again. So it's crazy to see it in full function and kind of see everything that we've gone on about. The obstacles with anxiety, which, you know, that's something that's very Saturnian. One of the symptoms of ADHD can be anxiety, boredom, and depression, and the ability to sort of manage those moods and coping with stress, which I think that's why the sign of Capricorn came up so frequently when it came to ADHD, as well as the Saturnian ruled Nakshatras, because Saturn really does connect to that anxiety, that depression. So a lot of people don't really associate the planet Saturn with anger, but if you look up Saturn's highest ruled nakshatra, Uttara Bhadrapada, it is known as the warrior star. And a lot of Uttara Bhadrapada people are known for their tempers. You can just think of that scene that Tyra Banks is most famous for, and Tyra Banks has her moon in Uttara Bhadrapada, where like, we were all rooting for you, like that one. So Uttara Bhadrapada is it can be that fiery nature, and the planet Saturn can have be very an aggressive planet. Okay, people kind of known it as being like a depressing planet, but it can be a planet that causes a lot of anger as well. I've just seen that if somebody has a strong Saturnian influence on their chart, then they can be very angry. Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna expand into that, but yeah, they can be very like angry people, not all the time, but yeah, that's one of the factors. And I think that would also apply to the moon ending up being a popular placement in Aries as well for the study. And I mean, Aries is also known for the temper as well. It'd be quite, I don't know anybody who doesn't know Aries for that. The moon in the 8th house, I'm not really surprised at that result as well, because I figured that the moon was more than likely going to be in either the 8th, 12th, or 6th house, because those are known as the malefic houses. And what I mean by that is that planets tend to have troubles in those areas. The moon in particular is a softer planet, so it definitely has a lot of difficulties being in the 8th, 6th, or 12th house. Now, why the 8th house instead of the 6th house or the 12th house? Now that I would have to conduct a different study on and look at people who have moon in their 8th, 12th, and 6th house and do another branch off of the video. But this was just a quick video to talk about what I found out with celebrities who have these placements, a quick little mini study coming on and show you the results, which seem to align quite well with the astrology, actually. I'm trying to think if there was any like surprising results for me. Oh, Ascendant and Chitra. So Ascendant and Chitra is probably one of the surprising results for me, only because I didn't expect Chitra to be the most popular ascendant for people who have ADHD or dyslexia. Kind of goes back in with that moon in Aries energy, because Chitra is a Mars ruled nakshatra. But I mean, when I was first looking at things, I thought Mars was going to be a popular placement just because Mars ruled people can be a little bit, you know, all over the place, very animated. I would love to look at Chitra more to see like what is it about Chitra instead of Dhanishta or Megashira that's making it come up so prominently in the results. But I do want to say Dhanishta wasn't that far behind it. It was very close. Tara Bhadrapada and Chitra were the main ones that Tara Bhadrapada, Chitra, and Dhanishta were the main ones, ascendant wise, that came up very frequently. That's why we have so many points for the Capricorn placement. And Shravana ascendant, not so much. So it's interesting how it kind of just skipped Uttara Bhadrapada, skipped Shravana, went straight to Dhanishta. So I would love to look at that more and see what's what. I would probably have to know more about dyslexia and ADHD, and I'm not a psychiatrist. So I'm going to end this video for now, and I thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that information, and if you have any suggestions, put that below. I do have a few ideas that I want to do as well, and I saw some other requests from you lovely astronauts. So thanks for watching. Bye.